Here's how it goes with the pot. The premise is if you had a piece of nevela meat from a non-slaughtered animal, or let's say you had some pork, okay, chunk of pork falls into your kosher pot of food. So if it imparts a taste, now you have forbidden food. Okay, that's the basic premise, imparting of taste, such that a small piece of pork or nevela that falls into a large enough pot of food or the soup or whatever it is that doesn't impart taste, so it's considered nullified. That's the basic halachic principle of nullification, which you've heard of. Now, the best way to discover if nullification has happened is tasting it. But if it's forbidden, you can't really taste it, because what if it does end up tasting like the forbidden substance? So you have a Gentile taste it for you. Okay? That's legitimate. That's the basic idea. If you can't do that, so you just assume 1/60th. If the ratio of forbidden substance to permitted substance is 1/60th or less, right, that ratio, then you can still assume nullification of the taste happened. If you were to, let's say, take, and by the way, they don't do it by mass or weight, they do it by volume. Okay, 1/60th of the volume. Most foods are water-based anyways, it's not so crazy. That's how they do it. If you were to have your cholent, which tastes like meat, and some milk got into the cholent and was mixed in, so the basic equation is how much milk fell in there, what's its volume, what's the total volume of the cholent. And usually you can figure it out easily if the taste has been nullified, right? If you have, I don't know, what kind of pot you put cholent in? Quart pot, let's say? Quart pot of cholent? Okay, quart. Okay, well, let's say. So what's the 60th of a quart? How many ounces? How many fluid ounces is that? Okay, so you can see how many fluid ounces of milk fell into your quart pot, right? If you use the decimal system, it's even easier. You have a 5-liter cholent, right? 5 liters is, how much ml is that? It's 500 ml. How many ml of milk fell in? So that's how you do it. But if you were to have, worst case, steak of a certain size, gets milk on it. A few drops of milk get into that steak, and it was cooked that way, so that the milk and the steak is now combined. There's definitely a milky taste in that steak. That whole steak is now considered a combination of basar b'chalav. So that steak is now considered entirely forbidden substance. The entire chatzicha, the entire cut, is now nevela. You start off with just a little bit of milk, which was permitted, and a little bit of steak, which was permitted. Combined, you have one large volume of forbidden substance, because milk and meat is an inherently forbidden substance, the combination thereof. So that once you have that steak, if you wanted to nullify that steak in a cholent, so that's a little bit harder. Why? If it had just been the milk that fell into the cholent, so the milk would be nullified, probably by the ratio. But now you're not talking about milk falling into the cholent. You're talking about a forbidden cooked steak. So that's a little bit harder to come by. Can you plug this in for me? So, yeah, what does that have to do with anything? The idea that pots need to be koshered is twice explicitly in the Torah. It talks about pots are discussed. The koshering of pots is in the end of Sefer Bamidbar. It talks about you get pots from the Goyim, so you have to kosher them. Use heat to kosher them. And in Vayikra it talks about kudshim, talks about sacrificial meat. The Kohanim in the Beis Hamikdash cook their sacrificial meat in pots. Sacrificial meat becomes disqualified after a certain point, non-kosher, nosar. It depends on which sacrificial meat it is, but each sacrificial meat has its time limit, usually within 2 days. At that point, the Kohanim have a problem. They cooked in this pot on Sunday. By Tuesday, they can't cook the next, let's say, sin offering in that pot, because that pot is suffused with tastes of the previous sin offering that's already expired. So the little bit of taste in the pot needs to be koshered. So it says you have to scour the pots in the temple. The idea that some had was that if you have your generally fleishik pot, in the olden days, pots were made out of earthenware, wrought iron, things like that absorb taste. The idea was that drops of milk, let's say they got into your pot while it's hot, are absorbed by the walls of the pot. The pot's full of meat. That milk that gets absorbed into the pot on the inside, let's say, creates a basar b'chol of steak. It's not trying to. It's not like you're trying to nullify 3 ml of milk that got into the pot. You're nullifying now the entire volume of the material of the pot. Because that absorbed milk, and now it became like one big problem. Makes sense, right? Okay, so this is an issue. This is disputed, by the way. It's not 100% clear that that's the way. My Rambam doesn't have a halacha like this necessarily. He would say you have to nullify the milk. It's not like the tastes work that way, especially if the pot hasn't been used for the last day, whatever it may be. What about the outside of the pot? Milk splashes on the outside of the pot. Let's make it worse. There's children cooking the pot right now. So the fear was the entire pot becomes like one steak, suffused with a basar b'chalav combination in all its walls, its material, or that even worse, milk can get through, let's say, the pot. If the pot is porous already, it's just like tastes linger in the pot from batch to batch, so too, milk that's outside the pot probably just goes through the walls of the pot and gets into the food on the inside, right? Makes sense. So that would be a halachic problem. You might have a problem if, let's say, you have a pot of food of some sort sitting around for whatever reason. It's fully closed, and someone pours some milk. Milk spills on the lid of the pot. It's hot or cold even. Let's say it's hot. Make it better. Hot milk splashes on the outside of your pot. Do you have to worry now that you have to calculate how much milk splashed on the outside of the pot, calculate its volume, and then calculate the volume of your cholent on the inside, or to nullify it? Well, what do you say if you heard such a thing, like a proposition that something that spilled in your refrigerator outside your pot and touched the pot has now contaminated the contents of the pot, or has somehow entered the pot? So nowadays, this is basically not reality. We don't have pots that absorb milk like that. Not on the inside, not on the outside. Certainly, none of the materials, even let's say aluminum pans, disposable aluminum pan. If you were to, let's say, have, I don't know, steaks in your aluminum pan like we have, or some other meat, good Shabbos meat, and you were to take this hot aluminum pan, put it on your counter on a spill of milk. There's a puddle of milk there. The milk does not go through the aluminum. Okay? Whether it's a very thin aluminum pan or even a more permanent aluminum pot, which most people don't use anyways, especially not stainless steel. As a matter of fact, even through aluminum foil, Daddy, things don't really pass through. I mean, there are ways to get, let's say, nuclear radiation through aluminum foil, alpha particles and beta particles, but that's not what we're talking about. That type of thing passes through aluminum foil. But our aluminum foils don't allow water or other substances through. So it's not so much of a problem. There are those who said that milk splashed on the outside of the pot while it's cooking is burned away by the fire. How they used to cook in the olden days, they put a pot into the fire. That's why it got all black. So whatever's on the outside gets burned anyways. So it's not so much of a problem. You don't have to worry about it. Our materials nowadays, no one cooks in earthenware pots on stoves. And even if you leave, let's say, hot earthenware, people cook cholent in crock pots and other forms of coated earthenware also that don't allow for anything to pass through the walls of the pot. Okay, let's open this
Rabbi,
thing. Yeah, please.
is Ben Yomo 12 hours or 24 hours?
Who are you asking?
You?
In the olden days, I don't. Nowadays, we assume it's just that day. It's not that halachic day. It's not like you cook meat in the pot at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and 8 p.m. because after sunset, suddenly it's pagam already. It would really depend if you're talking mitzias, how much time has passed. So I would think it should be 24 hours from the cooking. It's not like the halachic defined by the halachic day. But then again, it depends on the material, you know. But it's mostly irrelevant nowadays, unless you're using cast iron. I would say wait 24 hours. If you want, we could prepare the sources on that, why I think that is such.
Yes,
Yeah,
that would be interesting.
yeah, that would be interesting. There's what to be said about that.